This podcast episode is sponsored by our friends at Babylock. Babylock has introduced Sew in This Together to help people make it through this unprecedented time through their shared love of sewing. They are offering 60 days free of their sewed online classes to sewers in the United States and Canada. The classes cover sewing basics, new techniques, and projects. In addition, Babylock is encouraging sewers to make and donate homemade face masks. A step-by-step mask-making video and pattern can be found on the Babylock blog, as well as a list of organizations in need of masks. Visit the show notes for this episode at threadsmagazine.com for links to Babylock's Sew in This Together face mask tutorial and free sewed online classes.
Hi, I'm Carol Fraser from Threads Magazine. I'm the senior technical editor, and I'm here today with...
I'm Janine Clegg, managing editor of production. Hi, Carol.
Hi, welcome to the Sewing with Threads podcast. This is a bonus episode that we're recording today to keep you occupied, hopefully diverted a little bit during the healthcare crisis that we're having in the United States and around the world. Janine and I are here to talk a little bit about some of the things that you might be wondering about that happen behind the scenes at Threads, practical things, conceptual things, all kinds of things that might explain a little bit of how we work and why things turn out the way they do in the magazine sometimes. So the first thing I was going to talk about is our patterns and fabric stash. We have quite a stash of patterns and quite a stash of fabric also, because as you know, we sew many of the garments and show them in the magazine. We have a staff seamstress, Norma Bucko, who makes most of the clothes that you see. And so we order fabric, and there's often a little bit left over, which we store. Norma files it. Janine, have you ever been in to see her filing system?
I have. I'm always impressed by how she's able to keep it organized, because there's a lot of it. I mean, we do put together so many patterns, especially for our pattern review department. And you guys always pick awesome fabrics. So it's nice to every once in a while just go in and take a peek.
Yeah, I think Norma tends to take a little swatch and staples it to a card and writes down on the card the fiber content and the amount of fabric left. It's not usually much. It's usually a yard at the most, I would say. We try not to overbuy too much. Right. Then she files those cards in some sort of order, I'm not exactly sure, and each of the remnants gets neatly folded and stored in filing cabinets that we have. The drawers are categorized by color, more or less. So if you need some red fabric, you can go in there and find some red fabric. What we do save mostly are things that are solid or relatively plain fabrics. We use quite a few prints in the pattern review. And because we've shown them and we've highlighted them, in a garment, we tend not to use those again. So those sometimes go on our free giveaway area in the office. Every once in a while, there's a bit of a clean out, and we all scavenge around and decide who gets to take what home.
And you end up having very small pieces that maybe you can use for putting together a little accessory, maybe a zippered pouch or something like that. But
yes, Janine makes a lot of those little accessories. And so she, there are lots of things that are great for a fancy little evening bag or the lining on a little purse or something.
Carol, I do more talking about doing it than I actually do sewing it. So I have to confess there that doesn't always happen.
But that's how stashes are born, with the talking and the not doing. Yeah. That's why my stash is so big, because I tend to bring home things that are possibly a fabric that I haven't used before or don't use very much. And I think it will be good for me to test techniques on. It's not necessarily large enough for a garment, but if I thought I wanted to try a bound buttonhole or just see how different seams work on a certain type of a knit, I might have then something to work with, which is actually nice to have. Just little things to test.
And, a lot of times also, Carol, you and I have had discussions where we're reviewing the steps that we have in a particular article, mm-hmm. and something strikes us as being off. And so you pull out a piece of fabric from our stash and you say, well, let's try this out. And we go over it together. And so that's mm-hmm. when a couple extra pieces of fabric, no matter how small, come in really handy.
That's true. I also use them for any time where we might need a step-by-step sample or set of samples sewn for a process in one of the articles, because we make those sometimes. Sometimes the authors provide it. Sometimes we make them, and it's nice to know that I can go and find some sort of mid-range fabric, not too heavy, not too light, not too dark,
Right.
whatever, and do all the steps of putting in a zipper, whatever we need to show. So you may, if you're a careful reader of the magazine, you may detect that the jacket you saw in, January has been recycled as a pocket sample in June. That will occasionally take place. We try to keep it subtle if we can, but we do sometimes do that.
That's right.
Yeah. The other thing that we have a lot of course, are patterns, because every time we do a pattern review, we get each of those patterns, and we get other patterns as well, because we're looking at many different designs, not just the ones that show up in the magazine. And if we make any pattern as samples for a feature article, we have those too. So we have quite a lot of patterns from years past that are also stored in filing cabinets, categorized by publisher, the name of the company, and then within those, they're supposed to be numerical, but they're not usually. I think people who go and file don't always do that. And they are very bulging. These drawers are so stuffed right now that you can hardly find anything in them. We really need to do a clean out. But I'm such a pack rat on behalf of Threads. I never want to get rid of anything, because I know sometimes I'm doing an article and I need to do a diagram showing a certain type of a sleeve. And I want to know that particular, say, if I know a Vogue pattern has that sleeve, I want to know it's in the collection. I don't want anybody to get rid of it, because often they will go out of print and you can't get them. And speaking of out of print patterns, Janine and I talk about this a lot.
Yes.
Go ahead,
Janine. Well, we often, have outside authors write stories, and they will make a beautiful blouse or pants to show a particular technique, and we find out the pattern is out of print shortly before or shortly after we have gone to print ourselves with the magazine. And that's why sometimes you'll see that, I can't get this pattern, but it's certainly not intentional. Our plan is always to use patterns that are available to everyone right away. And it just so happens that sometimes they quickly go out of print. Carol, you have an instance in this upcoming issue that we're working on now where that's the case.
That's right. We're doing part 2 of Barbara Deckert's article on plus size fitting, and we made a skirt and jacket combination for our model. And I actually wanted to use a fairly straightforward kind of a straight or pencil skirt style skirt. So I found a really ideal one, and I ordered the pattern, and we made it for the model. And then it goes through, we start this months in advance. We were doing that in December. I think we started fitting her in December, and that issue just got sent out. So, and that was actually even a slow process. Sometimes it's 6 to 7 months before the magazine gets published. So, or turns up in your mailbox anyway. And the very last couple of days when we were doing our final checks, we go through, and if you are aware, the pattern credits are in there. Janine will talk a little bit more about that too. And we go through, and I always like to do a double check just in the last round of edits to make sure that everything is still okay, that the numbers are correct. I've got all the fabric credits the way that they should be. And that one last time I looked it up and the pattern was gone. It was listed as out of print. However, it is a basic straight skirt pattern with some darts in the front and darts in the back. So you will always find one, and it's something that's quite easy to make for yourself if you want to. You can easily draft it or drape it upon your body if that's what you need.
We often do choose very classic patterns. And so there are a lot of patterns out there that are similar, even if they're not exact, they are very similar to the pattern that was used that you see in the magazine. So the idea is that the techniques are very adaptable. So you're able to use it on a whole slew of patterns. You don't need to worry about choosing that particular pattern and worrying that, I'm not going to even be able to find it on Etsy or eBay or any of the sites that might have out of print patterns. So
yeah.
but yes, if you don't mind, I'll just take this moment to let people know. I have actually a copy here, and in fine print, the fine print in the magazine, underneath our captions where we talk about, a larger photo, we talk about what's going on there. Just below that, we oftentimes list what the pattern number is. For example, this one is a quick sew pattern that was modified. So, and this was in, I have to see, issue 205, which was October and November. So this may look familiar to you. And that's usually how we indicate what the models are wearing, what the pattern is. You can just look in the finer print below the caption. So it's pretty easy to see that. And then oftentimes we have additional information in the credits. And Carol, maybe I'll take this opportunity to talk a little bit about that. We have styling credits that we put in the magazine too, and I'm going to just show you. I'm going to turn the page here. Right in the gutter. Very tiny. It's right here, and it's right along the binding on the inside there, and you will find, what were the shoes? You see these boots, awesome boots. Where the heck did you get those? Well, if you look in the styling credits right in the gutter, you'll find out what the brand was, and sometimes exactly where we bought them, which website or which store. And you'll also find out who took the photos and who did the makeup and the hair for the models in these particular photos. And you'll find this for every story. So it's usually on the last page of that particular story. And again, it's in finer print, but you can read it. It is definitely readable.
Yeah. And in the captions, along with the pattern information, you'll also find information about the fabric that we used or that the author used to make the garments. We try to be as specific as we can when we describe it. So it will say something like stretch jacquard suiting, or, cotton spandex blend knit, or whatever we can, however we can articulate what that fabric is. So if you wanted to find something similar, you can do that. We tell you where we got the fabric, and we have many sources that we go to, really wonderful, trusted sources where we get great service. I highly recommend that you look in those credits and you figure out, who we've been working with, because they're always going to be good. You can get really great fabric from them. However, you probably can't get the fabric you see in front of you in that page, because by the time the issue comes out, they're often sold out.
But they oftentimes have good alternatives. We've discovered that.
And they're very good about that too. Yeah, they'll give you some good advice if you need to find something similar. Yeah.
Some of our loyal readers do call in from time to time and say, that fabric was not available. Do you have an alternative? And absolutely, the store that's mentioned there can give it to you, and we can sometimes offer some recommendations on alternatives. Yeah. And a lot of times in the articles themselves, we'll say this is good on this particular fabric, or offer a couple of suggestions. In fact, we do that in the pattern review, right, Carol?
Yes, absolutely. And the pattern review mentions, possible fabrics to use for those patterns. Sometimes it's the same fabric that will be listed on the pattern itself, because they usually give fabric recommendations. But often it's something that our reviewers will suggest that they've thought of that they think will work really well, even if the pattern doesn't mention it. And that's a thing that's worth remembering, that our reviewers are very skilled seamstresses with a lot of experience. And so they give quite a lot of thought when they do the testing, and try to give the best information so that you can have success with the pattern if you choose to use it. And in fact, Janine, I think we're going in this direction that you and I were talking about just a bit before we started this podcast, where we were kind of talking about the overall philosophy of Threads. And you'll see that our fearless leader, Sarah McFarland, who usually runs these podcasts, isn't with us today. She's got a rotten headache. So we said, we can handle this on our own, which we're trying to do.
Get well, Sarah.
But yes, get well, Sarah. And I hope we're not going to say anything that is not true. If so, we'll have to do a mea culpa in the next round. But we were talking a little bit about the overall philosophy behind Threads, which is not so much here's a project and you should do this project, but here's a set
An
of
awesome
techniques or
technique.
some
Yes.
ideas, and
Right.
we're showing you an example of how you can use it. But what we
Right.
really love is when a reader goes off and takes this technique in a different direction or applies it to a garment that we didn't expect or think of when we were working on the article and editing it. And when they write in and say, "Oh, I took this and tried the other, another way of doing it," it's exciting. That's what we're here for. We're here to teach you not just specific techniques, but ways of thinking and ways of turning this knowledge into your own, putting it to the use of your own creativity, so that you
Right.
can have an idea, and then you will have this arsenal of great techniques that might be able to help you realize what your idea is. And
Right.
this is going to be a plug for our forums too, because on our forums you can ask questions and have other interested people help you work your way through any problems that you happen to have. And if you read somebody else's question and have a great idea for answering it, we strongly encourage you to step up and help people with what your experience has been.
That's right. We really do learn from you guys as well. So we always welcome comments. And really, that is kind of how we approach how we word our articles also. When we are putting together a piece that has step-by-step techniques, we're thinking about how this is going to work on several different patterns. It's not for a particular pattern, although, of course, we choose a particular pattern and we make the garment so you can see what we're talking about, what it looks like, and so that we can also create samples that will help you understand the step-by-step written instructions. But again, as Carol said, it's up to you to decide what beautiful garment you'd like to make and where you'd like to apply the technique. I think of embellishment articles that we have all the time, that you see this beautiful embellishment and you think, well, I could put it on the bottom of a skirt, but I could also put it on the edge of a sleeve or on a collar. So just use your imagination a little, try different things. Experimentation is wonderful.
Exactly. I would have to say that is one of the hardest parts when I'm editing an article, when I get a manuscript from an author, and when I'm editing it, I'm considering the garment that we're showing, certainly, and the steps that the author has sent to me. But I'm also always thinking about how would a reader maybe want to take this in a different direction. And there is never room for all of that to go in there. I mean, I'm working on an article about jumpsuits right now, and I am just torn because I want to say, if your jumpsuit is like this, you would want to try this. And if it's like this, you want to do this other thing. And then if you have a different jumpsuit, you might want to do, I don't want to do it. There's not enough room. We have a limited number of words and a number of pictures we can show. So you try to stick with what the author said. But I'm trying to think along the lines that you as readers might be thinking too. And trying to give you the most complete story that we can in the 6 pages maybe that we usually have for an article at the most, or 4 if it's a department. So
we find sometimes that we're short on space. We have so many things we want to do, and that's why we have web extras sometimes too, right? Yeah. Right, Carol.
Yes, we overflow.
Yes, right. When there's some additional information, another technique that we'd like to include, and we just don't have space for it in the printed magazine, then we will put an extra online, and we indicate in the magazine itself that we will have a web extra for you, so you might want to go check it out. We've had some really interesting web extras that way. So,
and they can be good on their own. Okay, I think we should be wrapping up soon, but I did have one more thing that I wanted to say, and this is from the point of view of me and all the editors, including Janine, who's our copy and production editor. We go over every article multiple times. Many of us do. So each one gets treated quite a lot. And every word that you see in an article has been thought about carefully by many people. There's very little in there that's extra fluff. So if you have questions, hopefully we've answered them somewhere in there. Please read all of the words in the article. I know that I'm guilty of this when I'm reading another magazine. I look at things and I'll skip some of the introductions to things and get right into the paragraphs below it. And then I have to go back because I realized I missed some important information. We really try to make sure everything counts in every article as much as we can.
We do.
Yeah. So.
But we love to hear from you. So write in.
Write in if we did leave things out, which happens for sure. Write in. and kindly pointed out to us.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. And we should be recording another podcast next week. So
That's right.
Next week, there'll be another one coming up. We hope you'll join us there. We hope we'll have Sarah back with us,
Right.
and we'll be thinking of interesting things to talk about.
In the
Meanwhile,
meantime, please stay safe and healthy.
yes, and stay home, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening. Follow Threads on social media and visit threadsmagazine.com to view show notes for this episode. While you're on the site, check out Threads Insider, our online membership with exclusive access to expert sewing techniques. Until next time, keep on sewing with Threads.